Okay, so you wanted the inside scoop on the 2024 election. Well, hold on tight because the results are in, and let's just say they've left everyone speechless. We're diving deep into articles from The Independent and Al Jazeera to figure out how Donald Trump pulled off this unexpected victory against Kamala Harris and landed himself back in the White House. For a second non-consecutive term, he's our 47th president now, and believe me, the road to get there was paved with some seriously surprising twists and turns. We're talking major demographic shifts, voter turnout that nobody saw coming, and a Senate flip that has everyone buzzing.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Not only did Trump clinch the Electoral College, but he actually won the popular vote, too. That's 277 Electoral College votes, sailing past the 270 mark, and a whopping 51% of the popular vote compared to Harris's 47.5%. We're talking 71.7 million votes for Trump versus 66.9 million for Harris. Most polls had Harris as the clear frontrunner, so this outcome has definitely sent shockwaves through the political landscape.
I know, right? Talk about an upset and adding fuel to the fire. Republicans snatched back control of the Senate, flipping some key seats like Ohio and West Virginia. This is a major power shift, and it's going to redefine U.S. politics in the coming years.
The historical significance of this win, it can't be overstated. We're potentially looking at a complete realignment of political priorities and strategies.
So let's unpack how we even got here.
Yeah.
What were the key factors that led to this unexpected outcome?
Well, one of the most intriguing aspects of this election is the demographic shift. Trump actually managed to attract a larger share of Black and Latino voters compared to his 2020 campaign. He secured 20% of the Black vote this time around, a significant jump from the 12% he received previously.
You're telling me the man who built his campaign on Build the Wall actually increased his minority vote? There has to be a story there. What could have caused this shift?
It's not a simple answer. And it's crucial to avoid generalizations. We can't assume that all Black and Latino voters are a monolithic bloc with identical motivations. It's more about recognizing the diverse perspectives and priorities within these communities.
Okay, that makes sense. So what factors might have influenced this change?
Well, economic concerns are likely a significant factor. Perhaps some voters felt that Trump's economic policies would better serve their needs. Social values might have also played a role. Some voters may have aligned with Trump's stance on certain social issues. And we can't discount the possibility of dissatisfaction with the Democratic Party. Some voters may have felt that the Democrats weren't adequately addressing their concerns.
It sounds like a mix of economic anxiety, social values, and maybe even a sense of disillusionment with the established political order.
Exactly. It's a complex interplay of factors that contributed to this unexpected shift.
And speaking of unexpected shifts, there were some surprises with younger voters too, right? Support for Harris seemed to dip compared to the support Biden received in 2020.
Absolutely. Only 50% of voters under 30 cast their ballots for Harris, a noticeable drop from the 60% who supported Biden.
Wow. So even though younger voters are usually considered a reliable Democratic voting bloc, they weren't as enthusiastic about Harris? What do you make of that?
Well, it could be that. They weren't as excited about Harris as a candidate. Maybe they didn't feel she connected with their concerns in the same way that Biden did. Younger generations also tend to lean more progressive on social issues, so perhaps they felt that Harris, while progressive, wasn't progressive enough on certain issues like climate change or economic equality.
Let's get this dip in support from younger voters. Signal trouble for the Democratic Party in the long run.
It's definitely a trend they need to pay close attention to. Young voters represent the future of any political party, so this decline in support could have long-term implications. It suggests that the Democrats need to reassess how they're connecting with younger generations and addressing their concerns.
It looks like the Democrats have some serious soul-searching to do. But while Harris might have struggled with a younger crowd, Trump actually gained ground with voters under 45 in some key swing states like Michigan and Wisconsin. It's not going to sting a little.
It does. But the picture isn't entirely rosy for Trump either. While he gained support among some younger voters, he actually saw a decrease in enthusiasm from older voters, especially in those same swing states of Wisconsin and Michigan.
So we're seeing these really interesting age dynamics at play. What do you think this all means for the future of the electorate?
It paints a picture of a changing electorate with complex motivations and priorities. It's not as simple as drawing lines along traditional demographic categories anymore. We need to look deeper into the regional variations and the nuanced reasons behind these voting patterns.
Okay, so we've got this fascinating mix of demographic shifts. But let's switch gears for a second and talk about the international reactions to this election.
Yeah.
The Independent had this intriguing piece about Ukrainian soldiers on the front lines. reacting to Trump's win with a mix of hope and apprehension about continued military aid.
That's a great example of how this election will have ripple effects far beyond U.S. borders. Remember how Trump expressed skepticism about U.S. involvement in foreign conflicts during his first term? Well, this reaction from Ukrainian soldiers highlights the potential global impact of his return to the White House. What could this mean for U.S. involvement in international conflicts? What about our relationships with NATO allies?
Yeah, things could get pretty interesting on the global stage. And speaking of potential consequences, The Independent also mentioned a January 6 rioter who's hoping Trump will make good on his promise to pardon those convicted for their role in the Capitol riot.
That raises some serious questions about the rule of law and accountability for the events of January 6th. How Trump chooses to address this issue during his second term will be closely watched, as it sends a powerful message about his commitment to democratic norms and the potential for further polarization in the country.
It's a situation that could further inflame tensions and raise questions about the potential for future unrest. It seems like this election has created a powder keg of possibilities, both domestically and internationally.
It certainly has. And on that note, traditional post-election rituals are already underway. Harris is preparing to deliver her concession speech, a customary gesture that acknowledges the outcome of the election and encourages unity moving forward.
Right. And I imagine Biden will be making that phone call to Trump soon, offering his congratulations and reaffirming the peaceful transfer of power.
Exactly. These traditions are particularly important in such a politically charged environment. They remind us that, despite our differences, we still value the stability and continuity of our democratic process.
It's reassuring to see those norms upheld, even amidst all the chaos. And it's not just the U.S. political scene that's reacting to this news. The Independent also mentioned that world leaders are already sending their congratulations to Trump.
Those messages are more than just polite formalities. They mark the beginning of a complex dance of diplomacy as countries around the world try to figure out what a second Trump presidency means for them.
So what are some of the biggest concerns on the international stage right now?
Well, Trump's America First agenda during his previous term shook things up quite a bit. He renegotiated trade deals, pulled out of international agreements, and generally took a more isolationist approach to foreign policy. World leaders are likely wondering if he'll continue down that path or take a different direction this time around.
There's a whole new chapter in U.S. foreign policy, and everyone's watching closely. Think about the issues you care about. What questions does this raise for you?
For me, the biggest question is how this election will affect the global balance of power. Will Trump's policies lead to more cooperation or more conflict? Will he prioritize American interests above all else? Or will he seek to build stronger alliances with other nations?
Those are definitely questions worth pondering. And of course, the impact of this election won't be limited to foreign policy. There are going to be major ramifications for domestic issues as well.
Absolutely. With a Republican-controlled Senate, Trump will have significant leverage to push his agenda. Issues like immigration, healthcare, climate change, and economic policy are all likely to see some significant shifts.
And let's not forget about the Supreme Court. With a conservative majority already in place, Trump's potential appointments to the court could have a lasting impact for decades to come.
That's a crucial point. The court's rulings on issues like abortion, gun control, and voting rights will shape American society for generations.
Okay, so we've established that this election will have major implications for pretty much everything. But let's circle back to those demographic shifts for a moment. It's fascinating that Trump managed to gain support among Black and Latino voters, as Al Jazeera pointed out. Can you elaborate on the possible reasons behind that?
It's important to remember that voting decisions are rarely based on a single issue. We need to consider the unique circumstances and priorities of each voter. For some Black and Latino voters, economic concerns may have taken precedence. They might have felt that Trump's economic policies, whether real or perceived, would benefit them more than the Democrats' proposals.
Right. It's about recognizing the economic realities that people are facing.
Exactly. And we can't ignore the role of social values either. Some voters might have aligned with Trump's stance on issues like religion or family values. It's not about making generalizations. It's about understanding the complex tapestry of beliefs and priorities that influence individual voters.
And it seems like dissatisfaction with the Democratic Party might have played a role as well.
That's certainly a possibility. Some voters may have felt that the Democrats weren't addressing their concerns or representing their interests effectively. This could be due to a variety of factors, from policy disagreements to a perceived lack of connection with the Democratic Party's messaging.
So it's not as simple as saying that all Black and Latino voters suddenly switched allegiances. It's about recognizing the diverse range of factors that influence their voting decisions.
Precisely. It's about acknowledging the nuances and complexities of the electorate.
And what about those younger voters? We talked about how support for Harris dipped compared to Biden in 2020. What are some of the possible explanations for that shift?
One possibility is that younger voters simply weren't as enthusiastic about Harris as a candidate. They may not have connected with her message or felt that she represented their interests in the same way that Biden did. It's important to remember that. Each candidate brings their own unique strengths and weaknesses to a campaign, and those factors can resonate differently with different segments of the electorate.
So personality and relatability can play a big role in how candidates connect with voters, especially younger ones.
Absolutely. And we can't discount the influence of social media and the way information is consumed and shared these days. Younger generations are heavily influenced by online trends and discussions, and those factors can significantly shape their political views and voting choices.
Like a whole new battleground for winning hearts and minds.
Exactly, and that's something both parties will need to navigate effectively in future elections.
So we've talked about domestic reactions, international implications, and those fascinating demographic shifts. But let's zoom back in on some specific consequences of this election. We mentioned that article from The Independent about Ukrainian soldiers. Feeling cautiously optimistic about continued military aid under a Trump presidency, what do you think the chances are that he'll maintain that support?
Well, that's a tough question to answer definitively. We can look at his past actions and statements for clues, but it's impossible to predict with certainty what he'll do in his second term. During his first presidency, Trump expressed skepticism about U.S. involvement in foreign conflicts and often criticized NATO allies for not contributing enough financially.
He definitely seemed to favor a more isolationist approach to foreign policy.
That's right. So it's possible that he might reduce aid to Ukraine or pressure them to make concessions to Russia in an effort to end the war quickly. On the other hand, he could also surprise us and maintain or even increase support for Ukraine, demonstrating a commitment to containing Russian aggression.
So it's a bit of a wild card situation. Yeah. What about the potential for Trump to pardon those convicted for their role in the January 6th Capitol riot? The Independent mentioned that one rioter is already hoping for a pardon. How likely do you think that is?
It's definitely a possibility that can't be ignored. Trump has repeatedly voiced his support for those involved in the January 6th events, and he's even hinted at the possibility of pardons. If he follows through on those promises, it could have serious implications for the rule of law and accountability.
It would certainly be a controversial move.
Yeah.
And it could further divide the country.
Absolutely. It would signal that those who engage in political violence can escape consequences, which could set a dangerous precedent. On the other hand, some argue that pardons could help to heal the divisions in our country and move us forward.
It's a complex issue with no easy answers. It seems like this election has brought a whole host of challenges and uncertainties to the forefront.
It certainly has, but it's also important to remember that challenges can also present opportunities. The decisions made in the next 4 years will have a profound impact on the direction of the country and the world.
So as we navigate this new era, it's crucial to stay informed, engage in thoughtful dialogue, and advocate for the issues that matter most to us.
That's exactly right. Our democracy depends on the active participation of its citizens.
It's definitely a time for all of us to pay attention and make our voices heard. We've been talking about all the immediate reactions and potential consequences of this election. But I think it's helpful to zoom out and consider the broader historical context here.
You're absolutely right. One thing that strikes me is the cyclical nature of American politics. We seem to swing back and forth between periods of progressive change and periods of conservative retrenchment. It's like a pendulum, constantly in motion.
So could this election be seen as a swing back towards conservatism after the Biden-Harris administration?
I think that's a valid interpretation. The pendulum has swung back, and we're entering a new era with a different set of political priorities.
It's a reminder that political change is rarely a straight line. It's full of twists and turns, unexpected detours, and sudden reversals.
And that means we need to be adaptable, constantly reevaluating our assumptions and adjusting our strategies. The political landscape is constantly evolving, and we need to evolve with it.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today. We've talked about the surprising results, the unexpected demographic shifts, the potential implications for domestic and foreign policy, and the broader historical context to this election. But at the end of the day, what does it all mean for you? What are your biggest takeaways?
I think The most important takeaway is that we're living in a time of immense change and uncertainty. The old rules of politics no longer apply, and we're all trying to figure out what the new rules are.
It's like we've been thrown into uncharted territory, and we need to draw a new map as we go.
Exactly, but that's also what makes this such an exciting time to be engaged in politics. We have the opportunity to shape the future, to redefine what it means to be an American in the 21st century.
It's a challenge,
Yeah.
but it's also an incredible opportunity. So what advice would you give to our listener as they navigate this new era?
Stay informed, stay engaged, and don't be afraid to speak up for what you believe in. Your voice matters, your perspective matters, and your actions can make a difference.
That's a powerful message. We've all got a role to play in shaping the future. This election has been a real wake-up call, a reminder that the political landscape can shift dramatically in the blink of an eye. It's shown us that we can't take anything for granted, and that we need to be actively involved in shaping the world we want to live in.
I couldn't agree more. Complacency is the enemy of progress.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with this thought. Don't just be a spectator in this unfolding drama. Be an active participant. Get involved in your community. Engage in thoughtful discussions, and hold your elected officials accountable.
And remember, the future isn't something that just happens to us. It's something we create together.
So go out there and create the future you want to see.